LinkedIn is pretty amazing at helping you grow your small business. We cannot stop your new clients from emailing you at 3 a.m. We can help you sell, market, and hire in one place. We cannot help you be in 3 places at once. And while we can't help you organize your calendar, LinkedIn can help you land more clients so you have a calendar to organize. Grow your small business on LinkedIn. Learn more at linkedin.com/smallbusiness.
It starts with the way we think about our brands and our audiences. So at the end of the day, we serve communities. That community could be the community of business executives across New Jersey business landscape, or it could be legal professionals in Massachusetts, and we own the Massachusetts Lawyers Weekly, or it could be furniture retailers across the US or internationally because we own Furniture Today. And if you think about it from that standpoint, there's a ton of similarities because each of these audiences relies on us to know what's going on in the industry, to understand trends, to understand analysis, to get data and information, and ultimately to do their jobs better.
This is Small Press Big Ideas, a podcast about the business of local news in the United States. I'm your host, Paul Gewertz. Small Press Big Ideas is about the opportunities and challenges that local news publishers are facing for their businesses. I'll sit down and talk with journalists, entrepreneurs, nonprofit leaders, and more in the local news industry to find out what's working, what isn't, and how the local news ecosystem can innovate and flourish in the 21st century. All right, today on the podcast, I'm joined by Hal Cohen. Hal is the CEO at BridgeTower Media that has over 40 plus B2B media and research brands across the country. And we've been talking a bit back and forth on LinkedIn and via email. So good to finally meet you, Hal. And thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate it.
You as well. Glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks. And then I kind of start every episode kind of similarly, just this is our first time meeting for myself and for the audience. If you could just tell me a little bit about your background, just walk us through that, your career, what's led you to where you're at now.
Sure, happy to. So I actually started my career in the finance world and actually in accounting. I came out of school many, many years ago with an accounting degree, worked for a couple of years at a CPA firm, quickly realized that's not what I wanted to do with my life, but stuck it out for a couple of years, got my CPA license, and then went into a private company, but in a business management finance type of role. And that was then American Lawyer Media, which later became ALM. And I really worked my way up through that company, again, realizing that I didn't necessarily want to go the finance and the CFO route, but it was a great background to learn the business and to kind of move through the organization in a much more operational role. So went to grad school, got my MBA while I was working there, left for a short period, worked at Scholastic for a few years. They're best known, I guess, for the Harry Potter series. Came back to ALM a couple of years later, and then over time, left the finance world, moved my family. We were living in Long Island, moved my family to Bucks County, Pennsylvania, which is a great little town about 30 miles north of Philly, to run our office in Philadelphia. And that was kind of my split altogether from being this hybrid finance operator type role to running businesses. And that was really my passion and what I wanted to do, and leveraged that, did that for a few years, and then progressively took on more and more responsibility until I was running all of ALM's regional businesses. It was a group that, just under $100 million in revenue, and was there for a number of years. Left there about 9 years ago to take on a role at BridgeTower Media. Came in as the COO. I did that for a number of years, did a number of acquisitions, sold the company from Gannett to a private equity firm who is our current owner, Transom Capital Group. And then about 3.5 years, took over as CEO. So I can't say I made a necessarily conscious decision to get into the media space. Kind of fell into it as I was leaving the world of public accounting and looking for a role in the private sector. But it's been a great ride and a lot of twists and turns, but very happy where I am right now.
Cool. My wife has a accounting background. It just seemed like, I don't know, practical to her or something when she was in school. And she's the exact same way. She got out of that a few years ago. She's like, no, not for me. So
it's a great background
also a cool
for anything you do. You learn the business from the inside out, and then it could take you anywhere.
It helps me out running my small business because I'm terrible at that stuff, and I just give free labor.
Sure.
It's also interesting because a lot of the folks on this show are come up on the journalism side of these organizations, and there's kind of a split between business and editorial.
Yep.
Both are very necessary. Arguably, the business side is more necessary to make the other side work. So, yeah, I'm glad to dig into some of that stuff with you. Could you tell me just a little bit about BridgeTower? I briefly said it's 40 plus B2B markets, but just talk a little bit about that too.
Sure. B2B, business intelligence, marketing solutions, and events company. As you said, about 40 brands across 5 different sectors. Those sectors being general business, so your local business journal, the legal sector, construction, home furnishings, and then we have a division called Best Companies Group, which does the back-end research and surveying for best places to work programs and employee engagement surveys, and that their primary audiences are HR professionals.
Okay, cool. And then this show is it's about local media. It started like local news only, but it's branched out to all kind of media that serve local areas. And like you just said, you have some that are like your standard local business journal and some that are like industry specific, I guess you could say. So I'm curious, especially just going over your background on coming on the business side, accounting side, all that stuff, running businesses as a business. Could you just talk about any similarities or differences between the ones like your local business journal versus one that's, for lawyers or whatever the case may be, not location specific?
So we think
about,
I guess it starts with the way we think about our brands and our audiences. So at the end of the day, we serve communities. That community could be the community of business executives across New Jersey business landscape, or it could be legal professionals in Massachusetts, and we own the Massachusetts Lawyers Weekly, or it could be furniture retailers across the US or internationally because we own Furniture Today. So again, we don't think of it as much as a split between the geographies. We think about the communities and the audience we serve. And if you think about it from that standpoint, particularly considering we're all business to business, there's a ton of similarities because each of these audiences relies on us to know what's going on in the industry, to understand trends, to understand analysis, to get data and information, and ultimately to do their jobs better.
Excellent. I wonder, and I don't know, I'm not, I'm kind of in a media background, but how do I want to phrase this? So when you look at like a local business journal versus the Lawyers Weekly, I'm blanking on the name you were just using, but do you find it's almost a bit of a moat or a benefit to be local? I would just imagine something like to lawyers in general would seem more saturated, out into the wide open internet or, the wide open media landscape versus, Rochester or whatever the case may be where place.
There's pressures and competition everywhere. And so again, when we think about it, and the way, we've kind of built the company with that community oriented and audience based focus, right? And when we think about who we are and where our value comes from, we really have 3 differentiators. And that's in each one of our markets, the local markets, the niche markets, we deliver unique and authoritative content, right? Again, I use the NJ Biz as one of our brands. That's why I say business executives across New Jersey. And that is true in New Jersey for the general business community. It's true, again, I'll go to the Massachusetts Lawyers Weekly example. It's true for legal professionals in Massachusetts, and it's true for furniture retailers. And again, I'm kind of stepping across the different sectors that we touch. We have deep and trusted relationships in each one of those markets, right? So I know we're going to talk about, I'm sure we'll spend a lot of time talking about AI throughout this conversation, right? AI doesn't have relationships. People aren't going to talk to AI and tell them what's going on within their companies, what trends they're seeing in the market. So we have those deep and trusted relationships, and then we have connectedness. So you can find us through the web, you can find us at live events, you can find us at webinars, you can find us in print, you can find us on social. So each one of those individually doesn't create that moat, but collectively, there are very few other organizations who can do all 3 of those and then have that kind of, again, the moat that you mentioned, again, across all of our markets.
You talked about live events, webinars, showing up to your audience and everything like that. I'm curious, and I'm especially excited to ask you because, like I said, a lot of people are journalists or on the editorial side and everything. What's the media landscape from a business model is evolving rapidly right now. It has been for 20 years.
Yep.
It continues to. I'm curious what's like, you don't have to share numbers obviously, but like what's ringing the cash register across the brands right now? Like what are you leaning into? What are you looking forward to, et cetera?
So the biggest growth area right now, as you mentioned, is our events. We do just under 200 events a year as an organization. They range from we actually acquired a large scale trade show last year, which is doing very well and is going to grow about 15% this year. We do about 4 big conferences, mostly across the furniture sector, but a few others, again, kind of the national brands. And then we do a whole series of local events across our local markets, everything from recognition programs, best places to work, best women in business, celebrating the C-suite, 40 under 40, those types of programs, to thought leadership programs on topics of interest across those markets. So that is a huge area of growth for us. It's an area that has grown consistently coming out of COVID. Obviously, it took a little hit back then. So that's number one.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say A is within digital marketing services. We have become a very data-driven organization, right? And again, part of the value we bring is we have that first-party data that's so hard for our marketers to get. So we can connect marketers to their ideal customer profile through that first-party data, and primarily through our digital marketing services, whether that's just good old-fashioned web or newsletter advertising, whether it's custom content on a co-branded email, an email from us with their message, whether it's, again, custom content that we put on our website, which is kind of their message, but wrapped as thought leadership. We are now doing lead generation, so we can help them reach any part of that funnel that the client wants to. So really, those are the 2 areas of the business that are driving growth. Print, we still have a fair amount of print advertising. It's a challenged business across the landscape. We don't see growth coming out of that business. We do see stabilization, but not growth. And then, unlike many other media organizations, we have a pretty healthy subscription business. And that's primarily within our legal brands because it is that must-read content
Right.
in the markets in which we serve. So we've got a healthy and growing subscription business as well. And we're really investing a lot in growing that audience.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great niche to be in. Are all 40 or 40 plus, whatever the number is, are they all doing print, like all your publications?
Almost all have some
Almost
level
all.
of print. And we're constantly assessing that and looking at frequencies. And, we've changed frequencies for a number of brands. We have taken a few digital only. We've taken weeklies and made them monthlies. Again, constantly assessing kind of that risk reward analysis as to trying to optimize frequency and format.
Okay. Are you guys looking at the big trend lately is like newsletters, podcasts, social media, any stuff like that? Or you just kind of, I'm sure the presence is there also, but I don't know if you're monetizing it at all or anything.
We monetize newsletters in a big way. I mean, each one
Right.
of our brands
Okay.
has daily, sometimes multiple times a day, newsletters. I mean, that's a big revenue stream for us. And obviously a big way we engage our audiences. We have not, well, I shouldn't say we do a number of webinars throughout the year across our different sectors. We have monetized podcasts. It's not a big revenue stream, but it's a nice and growing revenue stream. So yeah, looking at all different platforms and trying to be
Yep.
innovative like everyone else and figuring out where the market wants us to be.
Adobe Acrobat, your team's home base. Collaborate within a shared PDF space. You've got your docs, your plans, your specs, and then invite the crew to build what's next. They talk up the teamwork. Here's an updated render. They think that this design could be a contender. And when somebody wonders what's the next step, AI helps you finish the rest. Bolts are tight, now your plan's refined. Run a smoother business when you're all aligned. Do that with Acrobat. Learn more at adobe.com/do that with Acrobat.
Yeah, you kind of have to these days. And because it's 2026 and I've been using this line too much, I'm going to have to stop to I'm gonna have to stop using it because the listeners are gonna get annoyed. But it's 2026, so I'm legally required to ask you about AI because that's how it feels these days. But it's a big topic. It can mean a lot of different things. But I love hearing people from different media orgs talk about general thoughts on it and like what tools and how they're using them, like in the newsroom and the
Sure.
organization.
What does AI stand for again? No. Yeah, look, well, first of all, forms of AI have been around for years, right? So that's not new. But obviously, over the last, call it 2 to 3 years, the whole world of generative AI has made a huge impact. And it's interesting how it's evolved. 2 years ago, I think we all became very aware of it, and it just started gaining some prevalence in the market. And so, and I'm in a number of peer groups, and we talk about these things, and everyone started these cross-functional groups within their organization to try and start figuring it out. But it was something I think, it was everyone's second or third job, right, of the day. And, we all tested stuff and we felt good about ourselves that we were staying cutting edge. We've really ramped that up over the last, 12 to 18 months. And we're starting to see some real benefit. And, I think what we've learned is you need people who really own the testing, the experimentation, the use cases, and as important, the governance of it, right? Because the balance is you want people testing things, but it's got to be done in a way where it's transparent within the organization, where the right people know about it, and it's not the wild, wild west, because you can also get into a lot of trouble if you use some of these tools in the wrong way. So we've had some real benefit from our uses, and I think like many others, the initial benefits have been on the side of creating efficiency within the organization. So, one example is I mentioned we do a lot of recognition programs across our brand, right? The local market, best places to work, 40 under 40, those types of things, and many others. We do power lists. What we've been able to do through using Claude for this is when we do these programs, we get submissions, we get nominations. So we've figured out the right questions to ask and the right prompts to use so that when we are honoring someone and profiling them, we'll let AI do the first cut of that profile, right? So rather than we would typically outsource that because you just didn't have the bandwidth to do it internally. But now AI is doing the first cut. Everything is vetted by a human before it gets published in print, online, on social. But again, specifically for the profiles, which is just taking that data that's provided to us and going out on the web. Most people have their profiles on LinkedIn where we connected in other places. AI can do that very efficiently. So that's an area we've seen a lot of efficiency from. We've also started using it to tag content. So one of the strategies of the organization, you asked about the local versus national. So what we've done, again, is really invested heavily in our audience platform. And what that's allowed us to do is take and this is really where we've had the most successes in the legal sector, take our legal audiences that were historically all local market, right? So Massachusetts lawyers, we'd reach Massachusetts lawyers and sell against people who want to reach Massachusetts lawyers in Massachusetts.
Right.
We do the same thing in Virginia, the same thing in Missouri. We still do that. But now on top of that, we have another layer where we know because of the investments in our audience platform and in building our audience that we reach 650,000 legal professionals across the US. So we've created a whole new revenue stream that is growing in significance within the organization to sell primarily legal technology providers across the legal audience, not in just one specific legal market. So bringing that back to the AI conversation, at times it's not good enough to just say to someone, we have 650,000 legal professionals. They go, great, but I want to reach litigators. So I only want to reach litigators within that audience. Do you know who the litigators are? Well, utilizing AI and tagging our content in a certain way, we now may not have Paul's first party data because you haven't signed up maybe for a newsletter or a subscription. But if we know that you're reading the content that's tagged as litigation content, we know that you're interested in litigation and therefore would be of interest to the marketers who want to reach someone who's involved in litigation. So it's another way that we're utilizing the tools at our disposal within AI to again, tag our audience, tag content so that we get a better sense of the behaviors of our audience and can utilize that data-driven information to help our marketers.
That's really smart. That's some of the coolest ideas I've heard from like media, local media with AI is a lot like what you just said. Taking whatever, whether it's local reporting for a local newspaper or like your information, that first party data, turning it into like another monetizable kind of asset. That's really smart. I also like what you said further back in there. A lot of folks on here from smaller organizations, 10, 20, 50 people or something like that. I like what you said, being in a bigger company and having somebody own the testing of AI and stuff like that. Because that's where, especially with the smaller folks, I see it get lost. Everybody's already wearing too many hats,
Yep.
and it just gets lost. It's not a priority. But anyway, that's really cool. I like the way you're thinking about it. Great answer.
Yeah, well, and I can go on. We have other things, but I don't want to bore you too much. But yeah, it's obviously a big issue and something we're very focused on.
Yeah. And I talked to a lot of people in media, and almost zero people are using it to write anything, but there's some really creative stuff coming out, a lot like what you just said.
Yeah, and we're not
really good stuff.
creating new content using AI, so I don't want to
Right.
have that, make that mistake. It is really just,
Yeah.
again, those profiles, which is just pulling content that you probably put out yourself about yourself on the web.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I ChatGPT or Claude myself, or whatever you say it, maybe once a month or so, just to see
Yeah.
how I'm showing up in the world and everything like that. Yeah, it's interesting. Okay, so touched on it a few times in this conversation that the media landscape is changing a lot, continuing to change a lot. And so I've been asking everybody to flash forward 5 years, and this might be difficult to do. Where do you see it heading? Where do you see maybe the media landscape in general? That's a big question, or at least BridgeTower. Like, how do you see the next 10 years playing out and yourself personally too?
Sure. Well, hopefully I'm still running and growing this company and having success. Those are my aspirations, at least for the foreseeable future. And then at some point retire and then let someone else do it. But I see the growth areas I mentioned being live events and webinars, but particularly live events and digital marketing services continuing to be the growth levers for the organization. Nothing, I don't see AI replacing that live in-person connection, right? And what we learned from COVID and coming out of COVID, when people were worried, is the live event business dead? Because your margins are a lot higher when you don't have to pay a venue and F&B and all those things. There was this huge demand to be back in person, and we're seeing that demand continue. So I don't see that slowing down. I don't see the need to help our marketers reach their ideal customer profile through digital marketing services and help. I think it's shifting from, we were more top of the funnel, meaning branding and awareness, and now we're moving way down that funnel, which is driving specific MQLs and SQLs to our marketing clients. I think that's going to continue. What I do think is going to change is the way we go to market with some of these things. I think it's going to be much more AI driven, and we're going to leverage AI in much bigger ways than we have in the past. For instance, if you look at the live event space, there are companies, we're not doing this yet, but there are companies who do trade shows for a living who are doing almost all their customer service through AI agents. Right. And all the questions that come as you're getting closer, whether you're a sponsor, an attendee, that you reach out to the event manager for, that's all being answered by AI. A lot of the BDR services are being handled by AI now. So I think the way we operate around these events and around our go-to-market is going to change in a major way through leveraging the tools that are either currently available or will become available. But at the end of the day, I think the revenue streams will be very similar as to what they are today. And the other thing, as it relates specifically to BridgeTower, we've been very acquisitive through the years. We've made 8 acquisitions in my 9.5 years at the company, 4 over the last 2 years. That's an area that we're going to continue to look at for inorganic opportunity and investment in the organizations. We've acquired a couple of business journals. Those are always interesting to us, particularly because some of the independent ones don't have the tools and capabilities that we have. So we bought Virginia Business Media 2 years ago. It's been a huge success story because they were very print focused. 80+% of their revenue came from print. They didn't have the bandwidth to do events. They didn't have really the digital capabilities. And we've taken our playbook and leverage some of our resources to add to what they were doing. And they were very successful to begin with. So that's been a success story. We've had a few others. We just bought a business, interestingly, in a very niche market, which is the window covering space. And you say, well, what does that mean? Well, that's kind of
That's what I was going to ask.
it's a huge market, which I didn't know about before we acquired it. But if you think about all the technology and electronic window coverings, your blinds, your curtains, there's a lot of technology that people are utilizing now in those, believe it or not. And it's both indoor and outdoor. And why that made sense to us is because if you think about the other sectors that we're in, the time being the home furnishing space, there's a lot of connectivity between the two, because at the end of the day, the common thread is the designer. So furniture retailers, furniture manufacturers, and window covering manufacturers and retailers all want to reach this designer audience because they are influencing the buying decisions from the homeowners making those purchases in a retail environment or the building managers in a commercial environment. So there's a common thread. And again, if you go back to what I said earlier about kind of selling across our legal audience, we've also created this segment of designers across all of our audiences and are now selling against those designers to all those other groups who I just mentioned who want to reach the designer. So there's a lot of synergy between the groups, meaning the window coverings and our home furnishings group. And when I say synergy, I mean revenue synergy and opportunity. I don't mean we're looking to, slash costs, because they're both relatively small groups and we need everyone we have in those groups. But so that's a long way of saying another area where we'll continue to focus as an organization is on looking for very strategic acquisitions, which again, either grow our audiences across key segments or bring us capabilities that we don't have today.
That's really cool. It's, the more I do this podcast, when I first started it, I didn't know, I was like, maybe I can get like 10 guests for this. I don't know. In the media world, I didn't really come from a media journalism background or anything. The further I fall down this rabbit hole, it's just like fascinating. The window coverings acquisition you talked about. I was at a kind of boutique hotel in town here for my anniversary, and they have like 20-foot windows. And I was like, what's this remote on the wall? And the thing just went, it was the coolest thing. I've never even thought about that as a business before, but
I didn't think about it till about 9 months ago when I was first presented with this opportunity. So, yeah, it's interesting. And
really
it's just such a niche market that the other beauty of it for us is no one else is in the space.
Right.
Because who else would get into that space from a media standpoint, right?
Yeah, you have to have the knowledge and that's great stuff. Hal, that's everything I had. This is great. I feel like I could nerd out on the window covering and the people you're looking to acquire, because it's really interesting to hear the way you think about it, but I'll let you go. Let me know where people can find you, what you want me to link to, promote in the show notes and everything.
Yeah, I think the best place is our corporate site, BridgeTowerMedia.com. You can see who we are, all our different sectors and brands, kind of the focus of the company, and a lot about the great people that we have. Because again, I didn't say this, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention before we ended, which is, it's all about the people that we have, and that they're the reason for our success. So there's my plug for our team, because we do have a great team. But yeah, BridgeTowerMedia.com, check out our corporate website, and then it can take you many different directions based on where you want to go.
Okay, cool. I will link to all that stuff. And when I go through the transcript, if there's anything else we talked about, I'll put some other links in there too.
Awesome.
Hal, thank you. This is great. Great meeting you. Thanks for taking the time once again. And hope you have a great day.
All right, you as well. A lot of fun. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you for listening to Small Press Big Ideas. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to help the show, the best thing you can do is to tell a friend or colleague and just take a few minutes to leave a rating and a review on whatever platform you're listening to right now. It only takes a minute out of your day, but it really does help the podcast grow and reach more ears. Check back for new episodes every Monday.